Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Alberta News and Views. Chrystia Freeland, the Wicked Witch of the Twitch, says, save the date. Budget 2024 is April 16th at 4 p.m. She goes on to say, from building more homes faster to making life more affordable to creating more good jobs, I look forward to sharing our plan to unlock pathways to the middle class for the next generation. Definitely not this generation, the next generation. And I'm sure it's a pathway to universal basic income so the next generation can just have so much prosperity being reliant on government. Canada was projected to be in a recession in the fourth quarter. And they dodged that because Alberta had record exports of oil and gas with their production. Stephen Guilbeault wants to cap oil and gas production in the name of emissions in Alberta. Are you kidding me? The driving force with the gears of Canada that has saved the country, he wants to cut production on it. That is this government. But there's more, my friends. There is more. This is Paul Vieira, and I hope I am saying that right. He is a correspondent for the Wall Street Journal. He is based in Ottawa. He says the Bank of Nova Scotia economist Derek Holt laments about the policy direction in Canada in his daily note to clients. It says, in a bigger picture sense, I am deeply worried about public policy in my country. Productivity is in a tailspin. A greater share of GDP is spent on here today, gone tomorrow current spending by governments and households than in decades. Tax policy is uncompetitive. Business bashing has become commonplace by people who have never spent 2 seconds working in the private industry. Competition policy changes face serious criticisms. Changes to labor laws have benefited unions, while collective bargaining exercises are driving wage growth to the moon despite collapsing productivity. Major sectors of the economy are literally being taken over by government, with recent examples being childcare, dental care, and now pharmacare. Do we get better quality outcomes in state-run health and education sectors? ? Try visiting an ER lately. Enough said. This is absolutely 100% true. Now, the reason he is saying this is he says, in a bigger picture sense, I am deeply worried about the public policy, about the direction that it is heading. And if you add up everything that is going on, we are headed in the wrong direction. We are headed for a complete economic collapse. Now, keep in mind, I want to show you something with the EVs. I write and I talk about this all the time on the platform. How I think it's crazy that Canada is pretty much going all in with this, what they call a green industrial revolution. Canada has spent over $80 billion in clean tech and energy investments that we know of. Chrystia Freeland was recently caught writing herself a blank check to spend even more. It is unsustainable how much money they are spending for pet projects, and it is taxpayer dollars that they are doing it with. Now, keep that in mind and listen to this. This is Peter Saint-Onge. He's got a great YouTube channel. He's got lots of good stuff in these short videos. Listen to this.
If you haven't ditched your real car for an electric vehicle, you are not the only one. The EV dream is dying, at least outside Tesla. In short, nobody wants them, not nearly enough to cover the billions of dollars that irresponsible car companies have poured into EVs to entertain left-wing journalists and BlackRock. A few months ago, I mentioned that Ford was set to lose $5.5 billion on EVs this year, having already lost $5 billion last year on the unicorn farts. The Wall Street Journal estimates Ford could actually boost profits by 50% if they drop EVs altogether. Indeed, Ford recently announced they're halting shipments of the much-hyped electric F-150 since dealers were refusing to accept trucks that they cannot sell. Ford's now calling off a brand new battery factory that was supposed to create thousands of jobs in Michigan. Meanwhile, Swedish carmaker Volvo, Chinese carmaker Volvo since 2010, said they're cutting off funding for their loss-making EV affiliate altogether. Now, Volvo had been one of the earliest adopters of EVs, even promising to stop making gasoline vehicles, so apparently that's done. Renault canceled its EV IPO, the shares of EV maker Polestar have fallen 83%. Hertz, the rental company, said it's dumping a third of its EVs. Apparently they're too expensive and customers do not want them. Even longtime EV cheerleader Consumer Reports now concludes they have twice as many problems and are, quote, less reliable than the old fashions. Incidentally, Toyota is suddenly the smartest guy at the table after taking heat for years from environmentalists in the mainstream media for being EV laggards, for being hopelessly wed to the outdated internal combustion engine. But Toyota held the line, insisting customers don't want EVs, they want hybrids at most. And now Toyota's hybrid sales are rising almost 40%, and they don't have billions in EV losses to write off. This all sent Toyota's stock price up 80%. Now, as London's Financial Times, one of the fiercest critics, now sheepishly puts it, quote, maybe Toyota was right all along. Meanwhile, those who did drink the Kool-Aid are dropping like flies. Short companies got bait and switched by government subsidies and left-wing journalists, and now shareholders are paying the price. When the dust settles, I imagine the only survivors will be Tesla and its Chinese imitators, who will keep plowing through Beijing's free government money, since they don't have to answer to voters. So what's next? Brought to you by Unchained.com. The green dream is dying far beyond EVs. Mega banks are pulling out of the $68 trillion climate action fund. That's trillion with a T. Windmills are being canceled across the country or going bust. Politicians are pretending they never heard of green, while the Wall Street Journal writes that green is the, quote, latest dirty word in corporate America. Why? Because when consumers have a choice, they say no. Unfortunately, that's only true where they do have a choice. I've talked about incredible jumps in energy prices and failing regimes like Germany or California, where green energy is being forced on consumers. So if your utility goes green and jacks the price, you can't opt out, even if the EV bloodbath is saying people don't want to go bankrupt playing for climate fairies. Of course, Washington is years, if not decades, behind the curve. Their lobbyists will keep pouring hundreds of billions of your money into green tech that nobody wants. The cronies will make out, as they have with every failed green project since Solyndra. And given the sums involved, it's $1 trillion and counting in the US alone, when the smoke clears, we'll have a whole new generation of rust belts with a whole new generation of taxpayers on the hook for every last penny. We've got a brand new episode of the podcast.
That's exactly what's happening in Canada right now. A whole bunch of those instances and examples is exactly what is happening. There is no, how do I say this properly? They suck at writing contracts. The Liberal government does. So they're being taken advantage of. So they're losing so much money in everything that they do. You look at the Green Slush Fund, the investment banks, ArriveCan, the scam. It is just one thing after another. So the important part that he says is the only way that they might survive is by force. And that is exactly what they're doing in Canada. Like, I can just imagine what they're doing, what they're talking about sitting at the round table. The Liberal government, when they're talking with investors and stuff, with this fourth green industrial revolution, these investors are laughing. They think it's awesome that the government's giving them billions of dollars in taxpayer money, and they don't really have to take any risk. And then the Canadian government goes, well, we'll just force them to use that. We'll just force them to drive electric vehicles. Because you know that these people are saying, well, what if they don't want to buy these cars? And that's why we're seeing such strict regulation in Canada, because they have to do it by force now. Because if they don't, then it will collapse. They want a guaranteed return in investment. It is scary. These are scary, scary times in Canada. When these investors these trillion-dollar investment firms are pulling away from it and getting out, that should speak volumes to the government, but it won't, because our government is completely incompetent. It's unbelievable. It truly is. Follow me on Substack and Spotify. All of you out there, like, share, and take care.